Greg Hayne has fired nice people, not for who they were, for what they refused to do. They joined his peer groups to grow their commercial roofing companies. Greg found some wouldn't grow themselves so their companies could grow. That's the work behind Hayne Coaching Group. Business growth begins the conversation. Leadership and personal development take it somewhere deeper. That discovery changed the meetings. Leadership development now takes a significant share of the time when these owners gather in person. It changed Greg too. When a member refuses the work, he now removes them from the group much faster. His diagnosis is blunt. Most contractors run reactively, not proactively. He keeps asking why some companies grow while others stay stuck. Greg says contractors do a terrible job hiring talent, both for the field and for the office. He also says too few emphasize building great cultures to work in. For him, hiring remains an open industry problem. He writes essays called Waking Up and wants contractors discussing the challenges ahead that they haven't recognized or addressed effectively. Greg Hayne, welcome to the tie-in. We're looking forward to this conversation.
Wow, producer Melissa with some awesome introduction with Blair Sutton and our guest this morning, Greg Hayne, John Kiesel, and of course, Keith Bilous here hosting the show with you guys. Greg, where are you joining us from this morning?
Good morning. I'm just laughing at the animations there of me. I look mad, and I'm not normally mad, but as John knows, it can't happen.
I love it. Johnny, I'm going to throw it over to you, man. We're going to have an awesome conversation with our friend Greg Hayne this morning. Johnny, why don't you start it off?
Yeah, I think in that opening, even though Greg looked a little bit serious, we'll describe it. And I think that's the way Greg looks a lot of times, is very serious and intentful. And I've been accused of looking that way most of the time myself, but we do like to have fun and laugh. One of the things that was mentioned in there was the ability to find other people that can do great things and hire proper staff. And that was, for me, one of the greatest things that I came away from that in the peer groups was, I am not the best person to do all the roles in our business, and I don't have the time to. So when I started reaching out and finding people that could do things better than myself, and I was comfortable with seeing people exceed my capabilities, is why we were able to grow and why we're still growing. And I couldn't agree more with Blair's comments there when she opened this up. But Greg, when you started, forming these peer groups and you invited people and you invited leaders to come and join, and, we probably thought even for myself, we're going to come here and we're going to talk about business strategy, but somehow along the way that changed into a personal development conversation more so than how to roll the dice and move the mice, so to speak. So, well, did you expect that to be a part of the peer groups, or was that something that a surprise for you too?
I had no expectations that was going to happen. I got these groups together because I'd become this clearinghouse for best practices in commercial service. And I finally said, I'll just get all these guys in a room. And I formed the first group that way. And we talked about everything. But what became apparent as time went on is that behind all of the roofing challenges that the contractors were dealing with, there were in reality leadership challenges. They have the wrong people in the wrong place. They have the wrong kinds of processes and procedures for where they wanted to go. What they were doing might have worked 10 years ago. It doesn't work now. Those sorts of things.
Yeah, and it seems like the peer group, I consider you probably the first person into the peer group concept. And, you definitely see other peer groups forming around the country and trying to focus on service and sales and other types of collaborations, but you definitely pioneered this. Do you think that, the leaders of these other peer groups, and I think that they're great people and they do a great job, do you think that they're, able to have that same impact like you are with saying, you don't fit in the problems do you think that they adopt that type of mindset like you have, or they kind of leave that off the table and not really discuss it?
So I know all those people, and they're all good people, and they're all trying hard, and just like I do. And all of us have our strengths and our weaknesses in how we go about doing what we do. And all of us are unique. So you're speaking to an area where I'm not afraid to tell somebody what I think, as you well know. And, and some of them apparently are more so, apparently.
Yeah, so when you look at the leadership in the different commercial roofing companies, I mean, what do you feel is the common thread why contractors get stuck and others don't?
I've been listening to the whole show, and I think you've already alluded to it, and that's an unwillingness or, excuse me, or an inability to look in the mirror and
Mhm.
see what's really there. Um, this is kind of a crude, but the fish rots from the head. There's very, very few problems in any organization, not just roofing company. There's very, very few problems in an organization that ultimately are not the responsibility and often caused by the owner because of what he or she will or will not do, or they're they're trying to take half steps when they need to take whole steps. And a lot of these things are understandable, but owners get in the way all the time. They're the pinch point
Owners get in the way all the time, John
all the
Kiesel,
time,
Greg Hayne, and Keith Bilous.
all the time.
John, I want to take something from what Greg said and what you were alluding to. And, we talk about the mirror. Why do you think it's so difficult for somebody, a business leader, a business owner, Greg, to look in the mirror only when they need to react instead of actually being proactive? Why is we as humans, or why do business owners always look at reacting, Greg Hayne, in your experience?
Well, first of all, you're assuming that when they need to react, they look in the mirror.
Yeah.
It's not always the case.
Yes.
There's some people that are very talented at being able to walk through a whole room full of mirrors and not see themselves. But I think that in many cases, because they run their businesses so reactively, they are constantly putting out fires. They are often, not always, but they're often the decision maker for everything, and everything has to run through them. Especially in smaller companies, this is completely understandable because everybody wears multiple hats. But you talked about reactive and proactive. There's another piece to this. So we understand reacting, we understand proactive, but there's another level, and that's called generative. And what John is doing with you in this program is generative. This thing is not that we're talking on the time. This is not necessary for the functioning of Division 7.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Division 7 can run just fine without this. So what John is doing is generative. That's beyond proactive. Generative is proactive, but not everything is proactive as generative. Okay. So we have far too many contractors stuck in reactive mode because they're constantly putting out fires. They don't know what else, and they don't know what else to do.
Yeah. So, John, I want to come to you because you worked with Greg, and I want because our audience listening in is looking to take things from our conversation. So, John, as you've worked with Greg, how did Greg teach you? I got to make some assumptions here. How did Greg teach you how to get out of your own way, perhaps, to make proactive decisions instead of reactive decisions? You've been a leader for 40 years. You're leading Division 7. So explain how Greg helped you get out of your own way.
Yeah, and I think everybody's probably got out of their own way in different ways. For me, and Greg, and when I was on the Best of Success stage and received Innovator of the Year award, and when I received it, I thank Greg Hayne from that microphone that day, and it's helped to see that I have potential to do other things other than be the decision making bottleneck. So, kind of that self discovery into finding value outside of being the decision maker and finding that rewarding mechanism for yourself to get up and contribute every day. So just learning how to contribute differently and giving over the keys to other people to maybe open up some doors.
Yeah. Coming up, the What If segment brought to you by Aptellas. Greg, coming back to you then. So what it sounds like John is saying is that you help these leaders discover themselves. And I know it's all fluffy, but get it moving outside of commercial roofing. You're sitting down with a business owner, and what I'm hearing is helping that man, helping that woman get out of their own way so that they can fly like John Kiesel. Would that be fair to say, Greg?
It's fair to say, but I think that what I am beginning to understand is that what's really going on is that someone like John sees how I continually question things. how I continually do not accept the status quo. And I give people permission to do that too, because that's what John did. I remember driving back from Asheville, North Carolina a few years ago, and John calls me on the phone and he harangued at me for 45 minutes because he was frustrated with the whole bunch of things in the industry. And his comments were, we shouldn't have to do things this way. And if you watch his history, there have been a whole series of steps that John has been taking to address that. So I think that really what I do is give permission to question.
Oh, I love it. Greg Hayne giving permission to question. Johnny Kiesel, let's move over to our friends at Tell what if? What if, Jimmy? What if?
What if the whole building envelope was one asset?
Come on. Roof, facade, parking lot, 3 different trades, 3 different budgets, 3 different vendors. That's how the industry's built.
That's how the industry's invoiced. It's not how the building actually fails. Water gets in, runs down the facade, pools at the base, cracks the asphalt. One problem, 3 phone calls, nobody in charge.
So the property manager makes 3 calls. That's their job.
Their job is a capital plan the board will sign. 3 vendors, 3 reports, 3 formats, 3 timelines. That's not a plan. That's a pile. Optelos flies all 3 surfaces in one shift. One platform, one digital twin, one defect map from the coping to the curb.
So the roofer suddenly does facades and parking lots?
The roofer suddenly has the whole conversation, and the contractor who owns the conversation owns the account. Optelos isn't a roofing tool. It's the operating layer for the built world. Roof, facade, parking lot, one asset. That's the what if.
John, when I saw this segment by our friends at Optelos and I'm learning about the building envelope, I got to think to myself, what if? Like, why would you not have Optelos help with your building envelope? John, dig into this what if segment for us before we bring back our friend Greg Hayne to continue conversation with The Job with Greg Hayne. John.
You know, Greg will say things, and he's asked this question before if he's speaking at IRE or wherever he's speaking at, and he'll ask people that want to build service departments, why do you want to have a service department? If the answer is because I want to make a lot of money, if the answer is I can get 60% profit margins, then you're not going to succeed. It has to be about how can you provide service to our clients. And this is bringing service to our clients beyond just the roof information or roof data. So if you're a service company and you want to provide service, this is a no-brainer to bring some more value to your operations and, you know, build that relationship.
Yeah. So if you're a building owner or a contractor looking for some great gear and a great team over at Optelos, I invite you to go check out our friends at Optelos because they will give you the information you can't even imagine that you have available to you, brought to you by our friends from Optelos. All right, keep it on with Greg Hayne, Keith Bilous, and John Kiesel this morning. Hey, Greg, so you've removed people from peer groups. Has it been John? Oh, yeah. Have you removed John Kiesel from a peer group? No. So listen, here's the serious thing. You've removed people from peer groups because although they were good people, they may not have been willing to do what was needed to grow themselves and their companies. How do you reach that decision to call a dude out and say, man, you don't fit here?
Well, we didn't have any guidelines when we started this, but we've kind of developed some. Number one is no assholes. And we screen people when they come in because we want to have good people. Just because someone fits the profile of being the right revenue and being the right geographic area, that doesn't mean we're going to put them in a group. And sometimes people screen well, but then after they're in the group for a while, problems become apparent. And so I have to do that. Another reason we get rid of people is because they can't get to the meetings. You know, you can join a peer group, but if you can't get to a meeting, you're not helping the other contractors and you're not getting the help you need. So why be there? Let's find somebody that can make the meetings and we'll have them come. They're more dedicated to that. And the reason people can't get to the meetings is because they're running reactive businesses. That won't work without them being there for 2 days. That's just crazy. Anyway, and it's not just small contractors, by the way. There's big contractors that have this problem. But we also have people that come into the groups and they come in with a problem and 5 years later, they still have the same problem. And everybody in the room knows what they need to do, but they won't do it. And that's okay. They have a right to run their business any way they want. But if you can't solve your problems when everybody in the room knows what they were, how are you expecting them to help you with yours? And so they've got to go. And so and that doesn't happen often, but they go.
Yeah, Johnny.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the peer groups. And I think maybe it started out, I think, fortunate enough to be invited to the first peer group. I think it was the best peer group that I ever was involved with, and the people in it. And, we definitely looked at, and we've seen some of those people go through those symptoms and characteristics you describe. And it did take a couple of years before I saw Greg starting to step in and maybe move people around and reshuffle some groups and that. But I'm curious now, Greg, is that time frame shortened to maybe 2 sessions where you see the symptom? Is it 3 or 4? I mean, how fast is this moving around now when you discover something?
So let's be clear. There's contractors that come into the group, and I'm sitting there going, "Oh my God, this is going to be a problem." Okay, and it is, all right, for a year, and then you see there's a change. And I mean, I've had contractors that have joined a group with revenue of $4 million, and they struggle along, and all of a sudden something happens and they go to $20 million in 2 or 3 years. Okay. Something clicked for them. Generally, they got out of the way. Generally, that's what happens. They get out of the way.
Right.
So I've just learned, because of the signs that you see, I see them more quickly, and I'm like, okay, we'll wait. It's not like I expect instant everything. Sometimes it takes people a while to come around. That's why it took 4 or 5 years to get rid of that one contractor, because I was waiting for it to click. Never went click. So,
Well, I'm glad you gave me some time, Greg, because I'm really good friends with one of our original peer group members, and she has been very vocal with me. She's like, "John, I really couldn't stand you when I first met you. You just always seemed so uptight and irritated, and I just didn't know if I could like you." And today, I think we're really, really close friends, and have a great experience together. But I needed some time to kind of get my wheels underneath me, figure things out. And that concept of first impression, second impressions, I mean, you have to give people some time to fit in, right?
yeah, yeah.
Hey, Greg, I got a question for you. You said that you've seen companies go from 4 million to 20 million because, as simple as somebody's got out of their own way. I'd like to learn from you, because again, somebody listening right now might have an aha moment by something you might say next. What clicks? Is it somebody realizing the power of delegation? Is it something maybe you have said? Is it them going back to work going, oh, like, is there something so obvious where, we say, okay, they got out of their own way, but what does it mean? Like I said,
So
yeah.
that's a really good question. And there's not necessarily a simple, clean answer that applies in every situation.
Yeah.
In some cases, I will sit down with someone that's struggling, and I say, get your ass out of the office and go sell, because you're a born salesman. Okay. And then he did, and the business blew up in a good way. Okay. In other cases, here's the thing. I believe everybody inside of them, everybody has this fire that wants them to grow and get better. And it's just a matter of listening to that. And if I can be a vehicle for bringing that alive in somebody, I didn't say anything to John. John figured this out. John simply responded to what's inside of John. And these people that go from 4 million to 20 million, or from 7 to 35 million, or whatever the numbers are, okay, they're simply responding to something that's already innately inside of them. That's my belief. Yeah. All I'm doing is giving them permission to listen to that. And sometimes I kick in the ass.
Yes.
John, what do you hear Greg say? What do you hear when Greg says that?
I think it's a safe place, is what I feel, in that peer group setting. And Greg does a great job at setting that safe place when he says, give permission to expand and communicate. And the things that I've heard in peer groups from people about, hey, I'm going to sponsor NFL football team, or I'm gonna, buy a NASCAR race team, or it's like, what the heck? But it's like, hey, let's flush this out, and by goodness, like they did it, and they were super successful for doing it. But it's okay to brainstorm, it's okay to think and get some feedback, because as an owner, as a man, it's kind of lonely at the top. You can't find people to bounce stuff off of, and this is that place.
Let's be clear. Every company is a mess on the inside. When you get to see behind the curtain, they're all a mess. It's whether you're a $2 million contractor or a $200 million contractor, you're a mess. And the people that are in my peer groups, they're a mess. Now, they're great contractors. And the thing that makes them great is they're willing to say, I don't have all the answers and I want help. That's the only difference between them and the don't. The people that don't join, that have the opportunity, their egos are too fragile, frankly. All right. But we walked into a peer group meeting a few years ago. A contractor had challenged me to be provocative. And so I walked in and I said, I want to ask you guys a question. How many of you are tired of the daily grind? How many of you feel like you're being drained, maybe even getting burned out? How many of you feel like that what got you to here is not enough anymore, that you need more? How many of you feel like your work drains you rather than energizes and feeds you? How many of you have constraints that keep you from moving forward in the way you might like? How many of you are tired of simply going through the motions? I said, I'd like to see a show of hands. Everybody put up their hands. Everybody put up their hands.
Well, that's a soundbite for you there, Keith. I mean, that was just all the reasons.
Yeah,